Imagine walking into a courtroom for the trial of the century. The room is packed with powerful people. The judge is screaming at the defendant, red-faced with rage. But the defendant says nothing. He doesn't object. He doesn't defend himself. Because the defendant is a corpse. And not just any corpse. This is the Pope. This is not a horror movie plot. This is real history. In the year 897 AD, the reigning Pope dug up the dead body of his predecessor, dressed it in sacred robes, propped it up on a throne, and put it on trial in a bizarre spectacle known as the Cadaver Synod, the trial of the dead. To understand this madness, we need to go back to 9th century Rome. Forget the magnificent city you see today. Rome in the 800s was a mess. The Roman Empire was long gone. The powerful empire of Charlemagne had also recently collapsed, leaving Italy in chaos. There was no central government. In this power vacuum, Rome became a viper pit. Local warlords, powerful aristocratic families, and ambitious church leaders were constantly fighting, literally battling in the streets for control of the city. Being the Pope back then wasn't just about religion. The Pope held one unique, incredibly valuable power. He was the only person on earth who could legally crown the Holy Roman Emperor, the most prestigious title in Europe. Whoever controlled the Pope controlled the crown. This led to an era so corrupt and violent, it's sometimes called the Dark Age of the Papacy. Popes were elected, overthrown, poisoned, blinded, and murdered at a shocking rate. It was Game of Thrones, but with bigger hats. Pope Formosus was elected in 891. He was actually a pretty capable guy, but to survive in this environment, you had to play dirty politics. And Formosus played hard. His fatal mistake involved a powerful Italian family called the House of Spoleto. They basically ran central Italy. At first, Formosus played nice and crowned the young Spoleto leader, Lambert, as emperor. But Formosus didn't like the Spoleto family having that much power over him. So, he secretly invited a German king, a man named Arnulf, to invade Italy and rescue Rome from Spoleto's control. Arnulf did just that. He marched his army south, seized Rome, and in 896, Formosus double-crossed the Spoleto family. He revoked Lambert's title and crowned Arnulf as the new emperor. This was the ultimate betrayal. Lambert and his mother, a formidable woman named Agiltrude, were furious. They swore vengeance. But before they could get their revenge, fate stepped in. Shortly after being crowned, the new emperor Arnulf had a stroke and had to retreat back to Germany. And just a few weeks later, Pope Formosus suddenly died. It seemed like Formosus had escaped justice, but the Spoleto family wasn't going to let death stop them. They immediately retook control of Rome. They forced the election of a new pope, Stephen VI. Stephen VI was basically a puppet for the Spoleto family. He either hated Formosus as much as they did, or he was simply terrified of what would happen if he disobeyed them. Lambert and Agiltrude wanted more than just their power back. They wanted total humiliation. They needed to destroy Formosus's legacy. If they could prove that Formosus was never a legitimate pope, then everything he did, including crowning Arnulf, would be invalid. And that meant the imperial title would automatically belong to Lambert again. And so, the order was given. 9 months after Formosus had been buried, Pope Stephen VI ordered his men to crack open the tomb and drag the body out. This brings us to January 897, the Basilica of St. John Lateran in Rome. The Synodus Horrenda, the Cadaver Synod, begins. What the assembled bishops and nobles saw was horrifying. Formosus's body, dead for nearly a year, was grotesque. The skin was decaying, the face partially collapsed. But they didn't just dump the body on the floor. They meticulously dressed it in the ornate, expensive robes of the papal office. They put a jeweled crown on his rotting skull, and they sat him upright on a throne. The trial was pure, dark theater. Pope Stephen VI acted as the chief prosecutor and the judge. Formosus was accused of breaking a rule that said a bishop couldn't move from one city to another. He had been bishop of a town called Portus before becoming the pope. This rule was ignored all the time, but it gave Stephen VI the legal excuse he needed. Historical accounts say that Stephen VI literally screamed at the silent corpse. He paced back and forth, demanding answers from a dead man. "Why did you usurp the throne of the Apostle Peter?" in such a spirit of ambition? Stephen demanded. To keep up the illusion that this was a fair trial, they had to provide a defense. So, they appointed a young, terrified deacon to act as the voice of Formosus. The deacon had to crouch behind the throne and answer the questions on behalf of the corpse. The verdict was never in doubt. The synod found the corpse of Pope Formosus guilty on all counts. The sentence was immediate and brutal. First, his papacy was declared null and void. Everything he had done as pope, every law he passed, every priest he ordained, every bishop he appointed, was instantly cancelled. Then came the physical desecration. They didn't just remove the papal robes, they violently ripped them off the decaying body. Stephen VI then ordered that the 3 fingers of Formosus's right hand be hacked off. These were the specific fingers used by the Pope to give the sacred blessing. It was the ultimate symbolic mutilation. The mutilated corpse was then dragged by its feet through the streets of Rome, while the mob, who were loyal to the Spoleto faction, mocked and abused it. Finally, the body was thrown into the Tiber River, the traditional dumping ground for Rome's most hated criminals. It seemed like the ultimate victory for Stephen VI and the House of Spoleto. They had their revenge, but the sheer horror of the event backfired almost immediately. The average Roman citizen was used to violence. They were used to political corruption. But this, digging up the Holy Father and putting his corpse on trial, it was too much. It was seen as an abomination, an insult to the dignity of the office. The tide turned rapidly against Stephen VI. Rumors began to spread that Formosus's body had washed ashore and started performing miracles. A monk reportedly recovered the corpse from the riverbank and secretly buried it. Public outrage exploded. Within months of the Cadaver Synod, a massive riot broke out. The mob turned on Pope Stephen VI. He was arrested, stripped of his own papal robes, thrown into a dungeon, and shortly thereafter, strangled to death. Vengeance had come full circle. The chaos didn't end there. The next pope, Theodore II, immediately overturned the Cadaver Synod's verdict. He declared Formosus innocent and had his body, recovered yet again, reburied with full honors in St. Peter's Basilica. The pope after him even banned any future trials of dead people. Yet, incredibly, even that wasn't the end. A few years later, another notoriously corrupt pope, Sergius III, who was also part of the Spoleto faction and had participated in the original Cadaver Synod, seized power. Sergius reversed the reversals. He reaffirmed the guilt of Formosus, proving that in 9th century Rome, grudges lasted longer than life itself. If you thought this was insane, hit like and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments what you think is the craziest part of the Cadaver Synod.